Still continuing on the noses a little bit here. Just finishing up the very outer edge of this nostril. And then I will move to the other nose a bit. So that would be a pretty close to finished version of this particular sort of middle nose in your packet. The one that has the nostril even with the tip of the nose. So now all I'm doing is just softening some of my highlight area / reflected light area with my tortillon. Because once again, I don't want them to be too abrupt, but I also don't want to rely on my tortillon for actual shading, just for softening things as needed. Because we do not want the over smudge effect. And then the rest of the shading up here would, again, be contingent upon what else is happening on that particular person's face. So now I'm going to go ahead and move on to step 2 of this example, which is where the nostril is actually above the tip of the nose. And remember that the amount of highness, levelness, lowness, size, distance, all of that would be contingent upon the actual person who is being drawn, and may vary a lot from one to the next. That is why it is so important to get used to observing what you are looking at more than your own paper. So once again, just starting this one out with very light lines, very careful lines. Because as usual, if I do not get the line part correct and accurate, then I cannot go back and fix it with the shading. The shading is a tool that is used to make things look more realistic. It is not something that can cover up what was incorrectly done at the beginning. Which is why I do often spend a lot of time just on my drawing steps. And there are several other techniques that you'll learn, hopefully in Art 2 or Art 3, that will help you even learn to observe and look more closely and accurately at what it is that you are drawing. So now I'm just kind of cleaning up some of my lines so that I can start into the shading. Again, not erasing every single detail from my original line so that I know where to put the shading. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start on the outer edge of my nostril. That's just where I tend to start. That does not mean that it's necessarily right or wrong. Every single person starts in a different place, and that's absolutely fine. So as I have said for other projects, one of your jobs during this exercise or study, so to speak, is to figure out what works best for you in terms of where you feel most comfortable starting into the shading. For some people, it's the tip of the nose. For some people, it's the inside of the nostril, the outer edge of the nostril. But either way, you want to make sure that you are starting with value scales so that you are creating that full range of values to get the depth in there. And I think that my example may actually be a little bit lower. The nostril may be a little bit lower than what the reference image is, and that's okay, but you do want to make sure that you get it as accurate as you can. It is still the same concept, though. It is still one of the noses where the nostril is higher than the tip, so it does still get the point across. And this particular nose I'm going to leave unfinished so that in class you can see sort of more than just one step, because all of the other ones have gotten to the point where they're finished, so you don't see that second sort of step. So once I get the first of the shading steps done, which is step 3 in the packet, I'm going to go ahead and stop on this one so that you'll have sort of an unfinished example there. Because it can be very daunting to see all of the finished examples and nothing in between to know whether or not you're headed in the right direction. Now on this nose, because the tip of the nose is lower than the nostril, the highlight is going to feel really high up because it's on like the top of the tip of the nose there. So again, leaving that reflected light there, but not leaving it white, and just paying attention to where the different values are and making sure that I fade everything back to either the next value or back to the page of the paper color. So right there again, just kind of correcting some of the lines there before I get too far into my shading. So I'm still just finishing up that third step. You can see that the depth is starting to happen. It's starting to look sort of three-dimensional here. But you know that the full range of values of the next step and subsequent shading is what would really take it further to that last step. So if yours doesn't seem to be very complete when you finish with that third step, don't stress it. Just keep building up that shading in layers. So that might be pretty much the third step of that nose. The shading has been started, but it is not finished. I definitely still have to get rid of this line and still a couple of other sort of outliney area. Still got some shadows to really deepen and some reflected lights to smooth in. But you know that the progression comes with layers. You're not just going to finish your entire facial feature in any one go.